The film I have chosen to present is the 1990 Australian comedy The Big Steal. This film was directed by Nadia Tass and written by David Parker, starring an Australian cast of Ben Mendelsohn, Claudia Carvin and Steve Bisley. The plot of the film is centred around a teenage boy trying to impress a girl by buying a second-hand Jaguar. The Big Steal was part of a decade of change in Australian cinema, with genre films becoming more prevalent in the Australian film landscape. Genre films, defined by Turner as, quote, films structured by the narrative codes and conventions of mainstream commercial cinema, were seen to be popular cinema, shown in Hollywood and were rejected by Australian film pundits due to having a lack of quality. Moreover, Turner expresses that there was some concern that genre films would not be able to apply an Australian emphasis to them. This can be shown to be false when you look at films such as The Man from Snowy River, Mad Max, and in our case, The Big Steal, which applied an Australian emphasis while still being a genre film. The Big Steal is a teen comedy, a popular American genre, but it was seen by Turner as anything but, quote, slavishly American. Turner speaks about how the characters are entrenched in Australian working class culture, which allowed the film to, quote, deal with Australian youth observantly, affectionately, and in rich detail. Butters dissects the narrative tropes Hollywood teen films have applied to them and explains how The Big Steal was able to put these tropes into context distinct to Australian culture. Butters says that it was even seen by some to be a parody of the American tropes. An example of this can be seen in the car chase sequence of the film. Butters states to the reader that The Big Steal's car chase sequence wasn't a tough hero displaying their masculinity in a traditional formula, like Sylvester Stallone in this clip. It was the story's protagonist, Danny Clark, driving a Nissan Pintaro with a caravan attached that belonged to his parents. In terms of masculinity, the film has a traditional sense of male standards in a time when they were starting to progress in Australia. Turner describes The Big Steal story sequencing with Danny becoming independent from his parents by trading in their old car, defeating the slimy car salesman in a car chase, and receiving sex as a birthday present from Joanna. Additionally, subtle jokes such as this from Joanna,
"So why don't you go out with him?"
mock homosexuality and give a sense of what traditional masculinity was defined by. However, the film scene showing Gordon Farkas as a crossdresser could be seen as progressiveness that was purposefully included by the filmmakers. Freebury expresses empathy for Farkas, who could otherwise be described as an ochre character in this film. Including a scene like this, which was vastly different from the other displays of masculinity in this film, may have shown that the filmmakers were self-aware of where masculinity in Australia was at the time. Multiculturalism was something becoming more prominent in Australia at the time The Big Steal was set. Freebury identifies, quote, Australia's emerging multiculturalism through the costume department's clothing choices for some of the film's characters. Van is seen wearing a shirt with Greek lettering, whilst Danny has a shirt with Japanese lettering and a rising sun. Nonetheless, the film still displays racism with derogatory remarks. Freebury points out that this was a familiar occurrence before multiculturalism became rife in Australia. The racism displayed in the film can also be linked to the traditional masculinity spoken about previously. Again, this seems to be purposeful self-awareness from the filmmakers that describes Australia's position on these issues in the late 1980s and early 1990s. Thank you for watching.